Hello everybody, Andy here, and to glass half dead, it's Kill Team. It's the Warhammer Championships results. You might have seen it being spoken about. You might have also seen it being referred to as the Warhammer Grand Narrative. Talk about that in a moment. But okay, look, let's not dwell. You can see it on screen, no doubt. The final was Chaos Cults versus Chaos Cults, and Chaos Cults won. Then there was an overall kind of like country versus country point scoring thing. So even though the actual first place went to an Australian called, I'm going to take a swing at it, Alexa Pavkovic, Spain as a country technically won. But as far as I can tell, that's just like random Games Workshop weird competition stuff. Personally, I view everyone as individuals and their factions, not their country. I don't really care about that. So in my view, first player was an Australian guy called Alexa. The fact that Spain won, I actually don't understand how that worked. Everybody got some points based on... Anyway, right. It was a 38-player invitational tournament. Due to how things worked, some people got all expenses paid. Others had to pay their own way. We call this the golden ticket versus the silver ticket. I don't believe it was ever actually a silver ticket. I think we just kind of adopted that in the community as a not funded golden ticket. The ticket just means an invitation to the event. Also, when a player wins a ticket and already has one, the ticket goes to the next player in line who hasn't got a ticket at that event. Of the 38 players, half the field was from the USA, which of course makes sense as the event is held in the USA, so I assume GW figured that they are more likely to actually go to the event, and also, let's be honest, cheaper for Games Workshop to fund their golden ticket for them. Then there were 2 tickets given to smaller local metas and 4 tickets given to larger local metas. So, for example, I believe that, for example, Spain and England were given 4 golden tickets in total over the year, and places like Poland or Peru were given 2. That sort of thing. Okay, that's the vague makeup of this tournament that we have going here. Now, as mentioned, you might have heard this referred to as the Grand Narrative event. However, I mean, that's just weird, right? And okay, sure enough, like I read through the Grand Narrative live blog they had going on Warhammer Community, and basically they would start a sentence like, due to the winning kill team, and then say like a short paragraph of random fanfic that amounted to actually very little as far as I could tell. But hey, you know, a few words and pictures, easy enough to do for one guy, sat at a desk somewhere, just getting, you know, win reports. Even if that's not what the majority of people were there for when you gather the most competitive top players in the world. I actually honestly thought that the Grand Narrative and the Grand Championships were 2 totally separate events that happened on different days. Turns out I was wrong. It was just, they were making a Grand Narrative out of the results of the Grand Championships. So, fine, cool. And also, it wasn't just, so as you've seen there, so the Grand Narrative didn't kind of say that, oh, that one win by Chaos Cultists from the Australian guy is what happens in the Grand Narrative. They were kind of falling back to countries, and everybody was pooling points. I don't care about it. There you go. It was the Grand Championships as far as I was concerned. So, let's talk about the format of it a smidge. Time rounds. So I had the option of talking about this when it came out, and it was just going to be like outrage clickbait, but I thought, no, let's not, you know, let's not ponder the orb too much. Basically, time rounds were between 3 and 4 hours. I believe day 1 was 4 hours, day 3 was 3 hours, and then day 1 was 4-hour rounds, day 2 was 3-hour rounds, and then day 3 was 4-hour rounds again, and day 4 was 3-hour rounds, okay? So it was alternating 4 and 3 hours. So look, I was genuinely shocked that yes, some games went to time at 4 hours. Sorry, let me rephrase. Some games used the whole 4 hours. Nobody timed out. But some games didn't finish until, you know, like 10 minutes before the 4 hours, right? On the one hand, that is obviously insane. Patently insane, frankly. Playing Kill Team the same amount of time as a long tournament game of 40k would very genuinely, as an outsider, just mean I would never look at playing Kill Team. So I really hate the optics of a 4-hour round of Kill Team. Even a 3-hour round of Kill Team I think is a bit dumb, to be honest. I would also hate it if the game actually took 4 hours to play. But it doesn't. And knowing people, I also think it's fair to say that if you give people a thing, they will take a thing. Tell people they have 4 hours and they will take 4 hours. I guarantee you that if you'd given those same players 2 hours, the game would have taken 2 hours. But on the plus side, games finished and no one got surprised with a sudden hour-long extension when they thought it was going to be a 2-hour game, but then a TO said, oh no, you can take another hour, it's fine. So like, in the grand scheme of things, I'm okay with it because it's consistent, it allowed every game to finish, and I'm just going to pretend that no game truly went to 4 hours of actual in-depth gaming, and most of it was socializing instead. There you go. However, I don't fundamentally like a 4-hour game of Kill Team, and I guarantee if my game went 4 hours, I would just concede because I'd be so goddamn bored. Okay, so let's look at some numbers. Let's also here we go. Hit next slide. Yeah, as you can tell, I took a bit of time in the meme factory here. 38 players, with the most numerous team being, can you guess? Yes, that's right, it is 7 Commandos. We then had 3 players of Intercession, Legionary, Blooded, Star Striders, Veteran Guardsmen, Inquisitors, and Chaos Cultists. Every other team was only picked twice, once, or nonce. There are a total of 24 specialist factions, and 10 of them were not taken at all. That's almost... Instead of saying almost 50%, 40% of specialist factions were not picked. I consider this honestly perfect fodder for the designers to look at and consider if they want to bump these teams up, or maybe bring down some of the dominant factions if they're trying to middle everything out. Of note, there were no Void Dancers, there were no Hand of the Archon, Felgor, Warp Coven, Exaction Squad, Kassakin, Novitiates, Hyrotech Circle, Farstalker Kimband, or Wormblade. And no, I'm not counting Strikeforce just in any numbers I've just suggested. They don't even officially have TAC Ops, so they don't exist. The top 8 bracket ended up being 2 Chaos Cults, 3 Commandos, 1 Breachers, 1 Galapox, and 1 Star Striders. Honestly, not terrible. I mean, okay, again, 40% of the top 8 was Commandos, but, like, you know, we could look at percentages. I'll move on from my meme, sorry. We could look at percentages of each team that went through, but I don't think those are relevant at this point. It's more about the individuals. Of course, the factions do make a difference. There's no doubt about that at this level of play, certainly. But saying that 66% of Chaos Cultists made top 8 compared to 42% of Commandos, therefore Chaos Cults are better than Commandos, just doesn't track for me. Yeah, I don't think it works that way. I think we can start to look at the cycle of the meta. Conversely, on a personal note, I'm actually quite happy to see Cultists win, because I've been saying that, you know, since they were nerfed, and they were still really good, but everybody jumping away from them was just a perception issue that wasn't backed by the quality of the team after the nerf, and I'm honestly right so infrequently, I'm going to take whatever I can. Okay, so let's talk about the Commandos problem. They rose to power in the wake of Chaos Cults, not because they were a guaranteed win into cults, but because they were the best possible counter to cults. At the same time, they received a buff, being able to swap a boy, a Commando boy, not just for the grot, but inclusively for a squig as well. One boy gives you 2 operatives. An extra operative, but one that always has to be engaged. It's a risk-reward thing. And certainly on the maps that we currently play are incredibly favourable for melee teams, and very easy to hide behind things, so actually quite strong, to be honest. Good stuff, whatever though. Not the issue. Due to the increased look at the team from this buff, it quickly became the tech that you always forward deploy between 2 and 3 operatives, not just 1. This is where the problem of Commandos begins. They have the best, highest turn 1 threat in the game, thanks to 3 operatives being forward deployed, and potentially with very good weapons for melee, running through scenery, and indirect. Additionally, these models will either be on objectives or able to immediately counter an objective movement from you, and because they can charge from concealed, they can't be dealt with from afar. This means that you are potentially starting turn 1 with 0 points. Like, that's not a crazy thing that can happen against a commando team. They can just counter your initial pushes onto objectives. That is immediately a huge swing. If you don't score turn 1 and your opponent gets 4, just concede. There you go, job done. And due to the forward threat of Commandos, it is entirely possible. Further to this, we have 10 wounds. Due to how damage breakpoints work in Kill Team, a 10 wound model is really tough to deal with. You cannot reliably shoot or charge even a standard Commando boy without losing half your health. 10 wounds immediately equals a team that you have to really consider how you handle, and that profile is actively policing a lot of mid to lower teams that can get a reliable 4 damage per hit out. Lethal to humans and Eldar, but not a problem for Commandos. I suppose the only thing of note, that's Commandos. There you go. We all already have discussed the in-depth issues of Cultists when they were super dominant. Nothing has actually changed. They are slightly less effective at what they do, but ultimately they still do what they do, which is they have the ability to put their big threat. They move up the board, put out lots of threat, but it's very weak, low-level threat. But they can then, at the start of the next turn, decide this is where my pressure is going to be. So they are incredibly reactive as a team. There you go. And that's Commandos and that's Cults. And they won, and I'm not surprised, and I think that's great. There you go. So, is there anything else to say? Not really. I think that I'm excited to see what comes from Salvation and Night Lords. And hopefully we can have something that can beat Commandos, but not so sure about that. I think so the final guess at Commandos is we obviously know that a big balanced data slate is coming. They said end of November-ish, sometime in December. This was in the last Meta Watch, and they did say that they were going to look at Commandos. The implication was that they were going to, in some way, restrict your forward deploy. Honestly, I don't think Commandos need a forward deploy at all to still be a decent team. But I assume that what they're going to do is say you can only use this once per game. And then that will be it. And Commandos will go back to where they were, 2 years ago when people were actively playing them before the cult invasion. But the thing is, Commandos were never bad. People just got bored of playing them and moved on to other things, etc., etc. So Commandos will still be good even if they can only forward deploy one. It just means you will have to actually think about your forward deploy instead of getting an easy kind of turn 1 alpha strike from them. You will have to consider which you're going to do it with, and you will have to take 1 or 2 turns to set it up or give up your leader. Instead of now, where you could just put everything forwards and just wreck. Cool. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Warhammer Championships, Roundup, etc., etc., blah, blah, blah. Stay hydrated. Bye.